Hi, and welcome to White Hat versus Black Hat SEO Show. My name is Josh Laser Kitty Bashinsky.
Laser Kitty.
And today I have with me my Black Hat co-host,
I don't know what my shirt says.
Mr. Clint Butler, and I didn't mute the broadcast. Mr. Clint Butler is my co-host. Say hi there, Clint.
Hi, Clint.
Now, for those of you watching who are not familiar, Clint is typically sarcastic, and so he has a shirt now to remind us that what he says is often sarcastic, and to take what he says with a grain of salt, and to not get your panties into a knot would be probably a good idea, or maybe not, or get them in a knot if that's the way you like it. If it feels good down there for a knot, go for it. And also, we have hiding behind a screen share, we have Ted, the Hammer Kubitis. Say hi, Ted.
Hello. The Hammer.
So today is a special show. Yesterday we put out a call for people to get their get their site and their SEO checked out by CORA, and so we picked around, I think, 5 of the submissions we got, the ones that showed the best information. Anyway, I showed some information, and we made a presentation about that. So if you still want your site looked at by CORA, email us. We can see what we can do. Or put your site in the chat. We'll see what we can do. And if you have any SEO questions, put your site in the chat for sure. If you're watching this on YouTube Live. If you're not watching this on YouTube Live, you can watch this every Wednesday around 1 p.m. Pacific. More or less every Wednesday. We skip Wednesday now and then, but just subscribe to my channel. You'll see what's going on. Or follow me on Twitter at Josh Bashinsky. So it's going to take a while to go through some of this because CORA comes up with such great information and a lot of information that we're just going to hand it right over to Ted, and Ted's going to start talking about these sites. So who got in here, Ted, so they can watch and make sure that they know what's going on, and what do you have to show them?
Okay, well, we had a number of volunteers. I couldn't fit them all into the presentation, so if I didn't put your website in the presentation, I'm sorry about that. But this is the first keyword clinic that we've done on this channel, and it's totally free, so nobody paid for this. People volunteered to be a part of it, and we'll just dive into it. So really quickly, CORA is a SEO tool. It measures over 520 SEO factors for your specific keywords, and it outputs information about which factors you need to tune more to be competitive and by how much. And it gives you a lot of data on how your on-page and off-page is deficient. For this keyword analysis, we are looking at the on-page only, so we won't be diving into the off-page. But there's a wealth of SEO tuning knowledge to be gained by looking at that on-page. So it's software for PCs, Macs, measurement tool. And the value propositions of doing SEO this way is that you're doing SEO with empirical data, and you know exactly how deficient your tuning is versus your higher ranking competitors. You can more accurately cost out SEO work, and you know when to stop tuning certain factors so you don't overinvest in the wrong areas. So with that, we'll jump right into the first keyword that we analyzed, left-handed scholarships. And I had no idea there were scholarships for left-handed people. That's amazing to me.
Okay. What a weird scholarship.
Apparently this is a thing. So I don't know much about it, but I decided to analyze the keyword with CORA. And the first thing we typically see with CORA when we enter the keywords are the match words. And so there's a number of things, like it can tell if it's hyphenated or not. It can find just the word by itself, not necessarily the exact match keyword. It'll look at singular and plural form. It'll do entity recognition, Juanita College. And let's see.
Show me any other SEO software that does that.
Well, you know, this is Google. So Google's giving us this information. Google makes these relevant hits for your search term bold. our software collects them because Google's telling us these are the words that make your page relevant for the search term. And we call these match words. And when we talk about matches, we're talking about this collection of all the things that Google considered a relevant hit. So when we talk about matches, it's not your exact keywords, it's any combination of these relevant hits that Google calls out in their source code. And so the software pulls measurement data. So we found our website for this keyword in result number 4, and we're comparing them to results 1, 2, 3, and the page 1 average. And the highest factor measurement, each row here is a different factor, and the highest factor measurement for results 1, 2, 3, or the page 1 average, so whichever one of those 4 is largest, becomes the practical maximum. And the practical maximum minus your measurement for your page for that factor is the deficit. That's how much more you need to tie for first place in that factor. So technically you need to do a little bit more to have advantage. Other than that, you'd have competitive parity. Now there's this overall max, which is the maximum measurement out of the top 100. We find that it's very impractical to tune your page to the highest measurement in the top 100. And it's often dangerous for over-optimization.
Yes, over-optimization is real.
But even worse than the threat of over-optimization, if you tuned to the maximum amount possible in the top 100, you're going to way over-invest. It's going to be far more damaging to your time and your pocketbook than anything else. So we use the practical max. Let's aim towards the top of page 1. And that's why we take the highest measurement from results 1, 2, or 3, or the page 1 average, whichever of those 4 is higher. So let's jump into some of the intel for this run. So the software creates a sheet called the SEO Tuning Roadmap, and these are only the strong correlating factors, the factors that correlated very strongly with your rank position in Google, and it's only the ones where you have a deficit. So we hide everything else, and these are the things you need to do to get competitive parity. That's why we call it the SEO Tuning Roadmap.
It's very simply, this is the to-do list. Forget all the correlation stuff. If you're not an SEO nerd like us, just run the software, do this.
Yes, exactly. And what I like to do and what I advise people to do with these reports is to cherry pick the easy ones that you can knock out quickly and right away. And the reason you should do that is if you could knock out these yellow ones in an afternoon and get a result, you should absolutely do that, because we're in the business of getting better rankings as cheaply and as quickly as we can. So always start with the easy ones and get the quick result right away. You can always come back and do a second pass later to get the harder factors to tune.
So Ted, can you tell us exactly what those words mean on the left-hand side?
Yes. So, like this one, sentence matches. We're talking about those match words again, those variant terms that are relevant hits for your search term. So we need to add 7 more match words into sentences. So that's something we can do quickly. And that's why I highlighted it yellow.
Same with P tag matches?
Yep. Now, HTML tag matches, the HTML tag, that's the HTML tag that wraps the entire document in the source code. So this represents what you need to do to the page overall. It wants 6 more match words on the page. I mean, you can knock that out pretty quickly. Your headings. And sometimes what I like to do is I kind of like to look at what's showing up in the roadmap and see if it tells me a story. I see there's, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 heading related ones that need to be tuned. So we need to tune our headings. And then I look, oh, there's P tags, there's HTML tag matches, there's number of sentences, there's sentence matches, and there's word count. Well, look at this word count. So there's something to do with amount of content that we probably need to address here as well. So we need to add 220 more sentences and about 3,000 more words. And clean text kilobytes. So clean text means you take the HTML source, you remove the style sheets, you remove the JavaScript, you remove the comments, you remove the HTML, and when you remove all the technical gobbledygook, that's a technical term, you're left with the clean text content. And it wants you to add 21 more kilobytes of clean text content to your page. So we're seeing two dominant stories here. You need to tune your headings more with relevant hits, with keyword matches, and you need to add more keyword-rich content to the page. So when we look at some of these, like the H3 tag matches, so we're talking about those variant terms that we saw from Google occurring in H3 tags.
Right.
You could have one or more in a single H3 tag, or you could have many H3 tags. You can mix and match. But we look, here's the page average measurement. All right, and here's the track domain. We see the track domain is on page 1. So we got page 9 heading towards page 1. We have the average measurement by page. So here they are at 2 matches in H3 tags, and they need to get to 4. So they want to get above the average. So we can visibly see the deficit they need to achieve to excel in that factor. If we look at the HTML tag matches, we can see they're dialed in for competitive parity, but parity is an advantage. So what you need to do is to continue using your terms on page so you get above the average. And the practical maximum is not this value. The practical maximum is higher. So when we see you hitting the average line, we know you need to get above it.
But you definitely don't want to exceed the practical maximum.
Probably not. You'd probably be wasting time and money at that point, because the people who got to the top of page 1 didn't have to go much higher than where they got. So in theory, you shouldn't have to either.
Right. Is it all on-page changes for this fellow, or is there any off-page stuff too?
We only did on-page for this analysis.
Right. So you have to run the full report to get the off-page analysis as well.
Correct.
But that still mines some really interesting data, some very important data about essentially their on-page SEO is not fleshed out enough. They need H1s, they need H2s, they need H3s, they need more sentences, they need more information completely.
Yep. And we see it with title tag matches. So they have one relevant hit in their title, and they need to get to 2. Now, back in the day, there's a long time where you would never see more than 4 matches in a title tag. I don't know if that's still true, but I know years ago you could like Google for the word games, and you would never see 5 matches in the title in the top 100. So definitely don't overtune your title, but at least get parity, if not beat by 1. And then we also pull LSI data, and we're the only tool on the market that does the correlation coefficients to tell you which LSI terms appear to help you rank. So they're sorted by that correlation strength with rankings. And we also pull your measurement, so how many times do you use each LSI term on your page, and what the deficit is with the average. And these are the boilerplate LSI metrics that you see everywhere. The number of pages that had the term, the maximum number of times it occurred on any one of these pages, the average occurrences on these pages, total occurrences across all pages. So there's the LSI as well. We won't spend too much time there. And then I like to point out the result sheet. It's a snapshot of the search results at the time the report was pulled. I like to look at this because if you look back in time at past results, it lets you know what's changed. But it also lets you know, are there things like exact match or partial match domains in play? And surprise, surprise, look at that. They're on page 1, coming up to the top. That's still works. Google's not penalizing this that we could see. And there's a pattern with these leading matches. So, and more specifically, there's often a pattern of leading match delimiter brand. And you'll see that in a lot of places too, a leading match delimiter brand. And so you can spot patterns like this by looking at the results tab.
Right. And again, the whole philosophy of CORA is that we don't necessarily care what a ranking factor is. We just follow the correlations. And when you follow the correlations, you are, X times out of 10, you're going to get it right because you're doing what the vast majority is doing, showing that they're doing for page 1.
Yeah. And the way I like to look at it is that when you have a field of possibilities of many hundreds and hundreds of possible SEO factors,
right?
If you can reduce it down to 2 or 3 dozen that correlate strongly, I mean, that just makes your guesses on what you should be working on so much better for that tuning.
Right. And instead of narrowing it down by what the herd of SEO gurus say on blogs, you narrow it down by what your software tells you. No, this is what is truly correlating. Their opinion, regardless, it still is a much more scientific way to go.
Yeah, and basically what these measurements tell you is that the people who rank better than you are doing this much more than you're doing.
Right. We're going to move on in a second, but just one thing that I love about CORA is that I love going on to Barry Schwartz's blog or any kind of SEO community and waiting for someone to say, well, this is a ranking factor. And you say, okay, what niche do you think it's a ranking factor? And then you do a CORA report. And you say, well, actually, this is not correlating with the top 10 rankings at all. This correlates with rankings on page 15 or 20. You have some substantive data there to say, well, no, sorry, you're wrong. This doesn't correlate. So,
yeah, and you can check for yourself in a matter of like 2 to 4 minutes.
Right, exactly. Anyway, so let's move on to the other folks here, see if we can get them some good information.
All right, so this one is not in English. So I think it's credit consolidation, but I could be wrong. It could be, a bad word.
We apologize if it's a bad word.
If it is a bad word, mad props to you for pranking us.
Yes, right. Yeah. Good job. No, but it looks to me like it's Polish or Russian or Ukrainian, it looks like.
Yep. And so, yes, CORA works with other languages, even with Unicode languages. The only caveat is that the user interface and the output are still in English. So if that's okay for you, you're welcome to search in Japanese. That's fine. Again, we get the match words even in other languages. And it looks like they have a number of different conjugations happening. So we see that in the match words. Again, the data works the same way. This time they were result 22, but we're still comparing to 1, 2, and 3 in the page 1 average. We're shooting for the top. Our goal doesn't change. We want the top of the rankings.
Yeah.
So
what are spot 1, 2, and 3 doing? We want to mimic spot 1, 2, and 3.
And so there's a lot. They had just a mountain of correlations and a mountain of deficits. And being in spot 22, that makes sense that you'd have a lot more deficits being so much further down in the results than that last example.
Right.
And so again, I look for the easy ones and I scan for the story. So again, we see a lot of the heading ones. So they've got to do a better job getting keyword rich headings on their page. And that word count, right up there near the top, 3,400 more words. They're being beaten with long form content. or they're being beaten by, large directory listing sites. You have to look at your competition to make sense of this, but, they're probably being beaten with long form content. They need to have 112 more kilobytes of page size, and that's probably due to the long form content. Similar story to the last one. I mean,
this is interesting. Google result link text has year. So does that mean that their competitors have consolidation loans 2018 in the title, and they don't?
Yeah. So
Right.
it's saying they need to add the year if they want to be like their ranking competitors, and that may make a lot of sense because people might be getting click-through rate simply because we're coming up on the change of the year.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Just remember to change it every year. It's interesting that that's there because the late great Eric Ward, that was a trick he told me to always put, if you have room, always put, after you get the keywords in there and all the words that make them want to click, if you can put the last few characters, 2018 or whatever the year is, it does seem to give a boost either in CTR or ranking or both.
Yeah, and this isn't our opinion here. This is the math said, yes, this correlated, and you should add one more based on what your competition's doing.
Fascinating. Also, I notice here's another one at the other end. Look at the right-hand side, has Apple Touch icon.
Yeah, and that one, if you've watched this show a long time, you've probably heard me say this anecdote many times. There was a time many years ago I added the Apple Touch icon when iPhones were brand new to our websites, and we saw an instant ranking boost. And it didn't last. 6 weeks later, there wasn't much of a boost anymore for it. But I think what was happening is that, when you stay cutting edge, all that cutting edge stuff makes you different from Google's web spam training set for their AI. That determines how spammy does your page look.
Mm-hmm.
So if you do the latest, greatest things, you look less spammy, and that might result in a better ranking until their training set has more modern spam that's also using the touch icon.
Exactly, yeah.
The other way you could lose that advantage is once everybody's doing it, then everybody has the same advantage, aka no more advantage.
Right. I just want to talk about that a second. So just to make sure everyone understands what you're talking about, this is the way that machine learning works. Think, for example, they're going to make machine learning to identify criminals or criminal behavior, what looks like criminal behavior out of CCTV cameras. Let's say it just happened that everyone who got into a street fight on that Saturday night, they're running their machine learning, were all wearing a red pin. Say it's Remembrance Day for whatever reason, and all those people got into a fist fight. The AI is this dumb that it would say, okay, he's walking a certain way with aggression in his gait and red pin, therefore he's a violent offender. Even though the red pin presumably has absolutely nothing to do with whether these people are getting into drunken fistfights, but that's how machine learning works. And so if Google looks out there and sees, these are the good sites and these are the bad sites, and the good sites had OG tags to their Facebook pages and had, whatever it is, Apple Touch icon, because they had installed it, and the bad sites didn't, then that would become a good factor, and they have less of a chance of tripping the Bayesian filter of getting hit by the factors for the bad sites. So it is kind of random. And the correlation, the only way you can't guess that, right? It'd be hard to guess. It's hard for even the people at Google to guess. The only way you can guess that now that rankings are moving into more machine learning paradigms is having CORA and running the CORA software to see what's correlating and what's not.
Yep. But like the last example, I'd say there's two predominant stories here. Tune those headings and add more keyword-rich content. We'll look at a few of the graphs. So body tag matches. So here they are ranking on page 3, with approaching 50. And where they want to be is up here on page 1, where they need to have more than 100. You can see the deficit in the correlation chart. Again, with the kilobyte size of the body content, here they are at about 20. They want to be on page 1 where they need to be better than 60. Here, they're better than average for page 3. They went above the average line for page 3. That's great. But they want to compete. You know, you want to play a page 1 game. Page 1 game, you need to do better. So leading matches and your heading tag. So your heading tag starts with one of those variant match words. Here again, page 3, they got competitive parity, so they met the average line, but you want to play a page 1 game, so you got to play to this level instead. Yeah, again, with headings, H1 to H6 overall matches, they're below the average line. Need to play a better game. Need to play the page 1 game specifically. Page size, so they're down here at 25, 30 kilobytes of page size. But since they're being beaten most likely by long-form content, they need to get up there above 100. Number of sentences, they got slightly better than parity for page 3, but they need to play a much stronger game for page 1. Sentence matches below average for page 3, so they need to work their keywords into their content more, and by adding content, they'll get more of these. So word count overall, they're below average even for page 3, and they need to play a much bigger game for page 1.
Right, and I'm sure these could go on and on and on, all the different stuff they need to do.
Yep. The LSI works in other languages. I can't begin to even comment on what these are. So we'll move on. Prowija or something. I don't know. I'm sorry if I mispronounced something. Okay, so let's move to the next one there. Oh, I just wanted to point this one out. We mentioned before those leading matches and the title tags and the results. Look at this one.
Yes, all leading.
I mean, that's the game they play.
All leading match, yeah.
Managed IT services. So the match words again. And this one I thought was interesting because you know what's not a match word in this?
Information technology?
It by itself. It's a stop word in Google's list of stop words.
Right.
So that's a complicating factor for the search term.
Interesting.
Which means you need to use it in the context of a larger search term if you want it to count.
Yeah, look at that. You'd have to be very careful how you would do that. Huh.
And so, yeah, it didn't appear on the list, but we do have our variants. Measurement data we'll get here. So yeah, the search term matches, and this one went through the roof because that IT doesn't count by itself. So you get a lot more focus on search term matches for this term as a result. So it wants you to use the exact search term 27 more times on the page. I'm not surprised by this because of that complicating factor. HTML matches, so your overall variance on the page, it wants 196 more variants. So it looks like your competition is simply using the terms more.
So, sorry, Ted, so would you switch to managed services versus managed IT services for this?
Well, I don't know. I would want to research more, but you definitely need to use your relevant hits. So managed services and managed IT services were both relevant hits. So yeah, I might consider doing that more, but at the same time, managed IT services is what they're offering. That's their product.
Mm-hmm.
So I think that's probably why we have so many search term matches here. Why they want 27 more of the exact search term on the page is that's the product they're selling, and they don't want to add confusion by talking about managed services more than managed IT services.
But when they tried to do managed IT solutions, it didn't seem to flag as a match term.
Yeah, Google didn't consider it something that was a relevant hit for the search term. Now it's relevant to the customer, but Google isn't all-knowing and all-seeing, so Google's, relevancy determiner didn't pick up on that. And that's important. So right here, matches in the top 5 keyword density terms. People get confused by these all the time. What they mean is you take the 5 most frequently used keywords on the page, and it wants one of your match words to be among those 5. So it wants a match word to be in the top 5 most used words on the page.
Which you would get by adding it to all these other places.
Yeah, exactly.
One thing we should mention is that you can kill like 40 birds with one stone here by adding the keyword, a few more sentences and a few more keywords in it.
Yep, that's correct. And so they want more matches and sentences, headings. So yeah, on this particular one, I'd say more than being beaten by long form content like the other 2 were, this one's just being beaten by the competitors using the terms more on their page. And yeah, I wonder more about the specific usage of the exact search term on the page. Because I would see that normally I'd say 27 more, red flag over optimization, because normally you would only want to pepper in 2, 3, 4 of your exact search term and then make up the rest with your variant terms. But because of that complicating factor, I think it's just dialed up a whole lot more to be competitive.
Right. But notice here that they also need H1 and H6 tag matches too.
Yep.
So an H1, H5 tag leading matches as well. So I think they need to have a proper kind of H1 paragraph, H2 paragraph, H2, another H1, kind of more of an essay style that Google really likes. And the SEO intelligence agency has shown in their testing, Kyle's shown that does seem to give a boost in ranking as well.
Yeah, I agree. So yeah, again, their website wasn't in the top 100. I had to add it in, so they appear to be result number 100 on page 10. They are getting parity for page 10, but they need to play a page 1 game again. So that's the keyword usage and the body content.
Let's just visually go through these and see the difference. Yep. Yep. Oh, yeah. Wow. Yep. Yeah. Okay. There we go.
And then again, with the leading matches and the title tag being a pattern for them.
Yeah. Here's the other pattern: leading matches and title tag. And that I think Clint, if you recall, I believe SIA tested that as well. Leading match in title tag, and I think it did show a boost. So. It's difficult for me because I like to try and write something that makes the title stand out so people will click it, but it's also versus getting that keyword to the far left as possible.
Yeah, Kyle's got another version of that test going. He's getting some interesting results already too.
Oh,
yep.
Interesting. Okay, fantastic. What's the next one here?
Another non-English keyword. So we got to totally let the math guide us on these.
Oh, I think this is, this is one of those fellas here in the chat, I think is probably the one who submitted this one. So there it is. We got it.
All right. So again, we got the match words. I like to point out when somebody's putting in ratings and reviews. I mean, that's a really good call out. So you might consider that if it's appropriate for your page. And this might be your page. And if you're doing that, then you're awesome. Here are the match words.
This is parking for, I think, Schiphol Airport.
Yeah, so they did have the reviews. That was them. So way to go. Keep those reviews there. Don't ever take them down.
Yeah, for sure. And don't let your quality dip either, because then Google will take the reviews down for you.
Yep. So they're number 4. So they're on page 1 and they're trying to move up. So the things that stood out in the roadmap, search term matches. So their exact search term 214 times more in the body tag. That's staggering to me. That's a lot. So I'd want to investigate your competition, see how they're getting their search terms exactly on the search page so many times, how they do that without scaring their visitors and without angering the Google. So this type of metric, I think, means you need to look at results one. Let's see who was doing that. That was body tag search term matches right here. So look at result 3. They've got something going on. They're the one that's driving that up so high. So yeah, I'd want to investigate what they're doing before I try to copy it. And then your heading tags. So it looks like you need to do some heading tags. And again, here, the HTML tag search term matches. The difference between HTML tag and the body tag is the HTML tag includes the head block that you don't see on page, but it's there in the source code. So that's the difference. So it looks predominantly like you need to tune your headings and you need to use your search terms on the page more. But on that second one, I'd investigate first, because you don't want to compete with someone if they're going to get in trouble with Google when they get found out. Are you still with me? Can you hear me, Josh?
Oh, sorry, Ted. I had my microphone turned off. What do you think if? What do you think about if that one you mentioned that had way higher keywords? What if they're stuffing the title attribute and the alt attribute, which is stuff John Mueller has said specifically not to do? What would your opinion be on that?
Well, that would be tricky. You know, we should see that in the correlation if they were specifically doing that. So we have title attribute matches, here, and they only need 16 more. So I don't think they're doing title attribute games. So you know, we need to look and see what they're doing. Sometimes what this can be, like if you have a non-paginating comment thread or non-paginating chain of reviews, you know, things like that could mention, you know, the term of the page over and over again and grow with time. So there might be a completely innocent and valid reason for why this has gotten to this point, but we'd want to investigate why before.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. When you see big numbers, check the page you're getting it from to see if they're maybe doing something you don't want to copy.
Yeah, so here they are on page 1, and here's where the page 1 average is because of that number 3 measurement. And body tag size in kilobytes, so the amount of body content here they are at 50, and the average is up around 70 kilobytes. Leading matches, they have 2 leading matches. They need to push it up to 3 to be in the lead. Again, with the leading matches and the title tag text and some partial match and exact match domains in play for this keyword. So clearly Google isn't punishing it if it's winning in places. And so what does CORA cost? Because I know some people will ask. It's a bit pricey, but you can save money if you use Josh's link and help fund White Hat versus Black Hat. So yes. You can save 25% on it. And thank you.
That's fantastic. Thank you very much, Ted. If I had a button to press for applause, I would. Yay. Okay, so that's good. Thanks very much for that, Ted. Folks, I hope that made sense. If you have any questions, any SEO questions, any questions for Ted, any questions how CORA works, any questions at all, if you got anything for us, type it here in the chat, and we'll try and get to it here.
Hey, Ted, you did all those you showed just covered the on page. Is there any value in running the CORA using just the on page and then turning the link, the Ahrefs and SEMrush integration feature on?
Yeah, because you know, the off page is most definitely part of the puzzle. There are three areas that you typically want to look at for where Google dabbles with factors. The first one is authority, and the basis for authority is well known. It's backlinks. And the
Surprise!
the second area is your relevance, and relevance is usually governed by an equation like TF-IDF, term frequency, and that math has been around for document indexing since like the 70s and before. So it's well known, and typically what happens in those algorithms is whoever says it more tends to win, which is why keyword stuffing worked in the first place and still works today. When you do keyword stuffing, you're gaming that search relevance bucket, and it's why Google has to manually police it. And the third area for factors is quality, which has been hinted by a number of different Google people that it might be related to click-through rate, repeat visitation, page traffic. So those are typically important areas. And with the off-page factors, you get to look into the authority bucket, and you get to look into some of the quality bucket with the social signals and things of that nature.
Cool. So thanks a lot, Ted. I want to move on. Seems like we got time. I didn't think I'd have time to cover this today, but I want to move on to a leak that kind of happened recently in the SEO community. So J.R. Oakes on Twitter recently hacked the Googlebot. He put on a script where he could watch all of the document object model elements, all of the HTML elements that Googlebot parses and processes once it reads a page, and he made an output for his particular page, and he released the output so we could take a look at it. So I have it here. And I found some very interesting things in it that you might find really, really important. Some big, huge clues, I think, as to what some ranking factors could be, and definitely what is not, or what Googlebot's not looking at and parsing. So let's take a look at it very quickly. Again, if you guys have any questions, SEO questions for us, ask them up in the chat, and we'll be happy to get to them. So let's take a look at this. Now, you guys, can you read this, what I got here? Should I make it bigger?
That's readable.
You can read that?
Yep.
Okay, fantastic. So it's interesting, and I'll just go here from the top. So it goes with the origin, it checks whether or not there's any hash, and it'll parse the hash separately. So the hash would be like like the pipe, like the # code.io # my named anchor down here or whatever, or for say Ajax or whatever. It'll parse that out. It'll check the HTTP port. That's interesting too. And if you check this out, it checks the href, of course. It looks at the protocol. That's interesting. Look at this one. It checks what your Facebook page URL is, and it will add your Facebook page URL when parsing this particular document. I thought that was very interesting. Also, it's looking at your Discus short name, right? That is loaded on that page. So I've long thought for sure that Google, and I've had some results, although I have to test this in a single variable environment still, but I've long thought, and it's long been kind of said from Google, that social media it doesn't count for rankings, but it's good for users to have an active social media page. And I'm wondering if these kind of Discus signals, the kind of quality signals of you discussing on Discus for your kind of your entity, for your author, what used to be called the author tag. I'm wondering if they're using this kind of information to kind of validate what they're finding on this page, and like a real canonical kind of concatenating that. So that's kind of interesting.
In at SMX West a year, maybe 2 years ago, there's that Google engineer. I forget his last name. I think it's like Paul Hayer.
Yeah, Paul Har. Yeah.
Paul Har, that's right. I asked him specifically because I had a hunch back then. Is Google collecting the Open Graph data for search, specifically for search? And I knew enough not to ask, is Open Graph a factor? Because that shuts them down.
Right. Don't ask what a factor is. Yeah.
Since I phrased it correctly, he gave me an honest answer and said, yes, we are.
Well, there you go. Well, why pull it if it's not a factor? So that's good information. I would definitely want to test that for the final say, but I know CORA also correlates OG tags very highly with ranking as well. So, I mean, that's 4 levels of evidence. I don't know if I need quite the 5th at that point. Google Analytics object, they do check to see if you're running Google Analytics. That's interesting. Why would they care? Why would they care if Google Analytics is being loaded? Maybe they are doing some checking. Maybe they are dropping into Google Analytics and checking some of your stats, even though they keep promising and have been swearing on a stack of Web 2.0 books forever that they don't use Google Analytics. But then why is Googlebot parsing the JavaScript and checking to see if you unloading it and storing it in memory that you are running Google Analytics?
Well, if they're executing JavaScript, if Googlebot's executing passive JavaScript, then if there is Google Analytics on the page, it should fire, and it could potentially, well, and probably does modify the DOM in terms of the data object that it'll communicate. So that one might be, nothing nefarious. That might just be normal behavior of JavaScript in the DOM.
It might be, but the way this was explained by J.R. Oakes is this is only what Googlebot is parsing, and you said on my page there's plenty of JavaScript it didn't parse and didn't put in here.
Well, Googlebot would only, in theory, render the passive JavaScript. Mm-hmm. So anything that requires user interaction or anything like that wouldn't fire. So the only JavaScript you'd see in there would be the passive JavaScript.
But why is Googlebot logging this and sending this back to Google servers?
Well, that I don't know.
That's the claim. That's the claim that J.R. Oakes is making, is that this is only what they're logging and sending back to Google servers.
Well, keep in mind that Google has openly admitted that they're using the DOM, that they parse via the DOM and they traverse the DOM and they use the DOM. So it only makes sense when Googlebot would take your web page and put it into the Google cache, they would be serializing the DOM and sending the whole DOM over. So it's a snapshot of the state of that browser at that time.
Okay, but are you okay? So yes, Google Analytics will not fire if it's cached and when it's loaded to keep the stats in Google Analytics correctly, because nothing in Google Analytics is changing the rendering of your web page, which is usually the whole thing that the document object model is used for.
But you have to understand, though, that if it's a snippet in your source, it's a node in your DOM.
It certainly is. Yep, it definitely is.
So if they're capturing the DOM and they're sending it over, there's going to be a node for that snippet in the source.
Okay, but you just said something else that blew my mind. Are you inferring that, as far as I know, J.R. Oakes' page he did this on, we can check, it's crowdseo.io, I believe it was here, is not being served from the Google cache. This is being served from his own server.
Yeah, but when Googlebot crawls it, they're taking a copy and putting it in the Google cache. And they're most likely doing that by taking, a serialized version of the DOM at the time they crawled and sending that to the Google cache.
True, but they, again, so this argument is, but there is absolutely no reason. Google is smart enough, and there's absolutely no reason that they need to check that they're running Google Analytics, and what the Google Analytic DOM element node name, in this case function, is GA, and that's what it is. They don't need. They would strip that out. Why would they waste that room in the Google cache? They don't need that.
Well, they might be just capturing it along with everything else in the DOM, so it might not
That would be wasteful. Google would never do that.
But the thing is to find to capture for the cache. The reason they do the Google cache is so that if they make a change to their algorithm, they don't have to recrawl the whole internet politely. They can recalculate everything against the cache as fast and as aggressively as they'd like to. So when they do that, if you pick and choose and decide, oh no, we need to find out if there was a Google Analytics there, but we didn't capture the data, well, now we have to recrawl the entire internet to fix this problem.
True, and I agree, and you're right, that's exactly how they work. But again, they would only need the Google Analytics information there if it somehow was used in ranking.
And
if it's not used in ranking in any way, then they shouldn't care. It can be completely invisible.
It might be a trust thing, too. They might consider that a trust factor.
Well, then that vis-a-vis would be either directly or indirectly a ranking factor.
Yeah, like just having it as a trust factor.
Well,
and like when we're doing the brand entities, like Mike and Brad talk about all the time. A real brand is going to have X, Y, and Z, and maybe one of the letters of the alphabet for Google is
like an Apple Touch.
Brand is going to use Google Analytics. Hell, we're giving it to you for free. Why aren't you using it, dumbass?
Right.
Well, and let's go the business route with it instead of the search algorithm route. If Google wanted to know the market share of websites using Google Analytics, this would be the place to check for it. When it fires on the page, capture it in the DOM. Now they know, by sample, how many websites use GA and how many don't.
That's the most plausible. That's the most plausible argument you've given thus far. However, I still got to debate that. This is huge, guys. Like, guys, if you're listening to our debate and you're like, oh, you search nerds, what are you doing? A, get out of the business because this is all we do. B, this is huge, guys. This is huge.
Well,
Google is not supposed to care about Google Analytics. They've sworn to us with their hand up and on murdered babies. They've made a promise. They will not use Google Analytics in any way, shape, or form. I cannot believe that the Google Analytics team, which is a completely different company, essentially, the Google search team, is Google Search going to be policing that for analytics? They have their own ways of knowing how many installs there are.
Josh, I don't think I've ever seen it correlate strongly with rankings, and I have it in CORA.
I'm sure you do, and I'm sure you'd know right away. But why? Okay, but then why are they pulling it here? Why? Googlebot is not supposed to care at all about this. Why are they pulling it?
I think it's either by accident because they're capturing the state of the whole DOM, serializing it and sending it, and it's along for the ride, or they have some business purpose. They
want to use it in the future. And so, again, guys, get CORA, because suddenly one day you might notice that Google Analytics being installed suddenly correlates with rankings. And then you're like, okay.
They have the data. So
yeah. As soon as Google Analytics becomes a fully paid service, then suddenly it correlates with rankings, right? But there's even more interesting stuff. So that's just two of the bombshells. Let's look more. Okay, so let's further on. Look, they're checking for speech synthesis. And it's all null, false, false, false. So they don't have any.
Can you show us that? I can't see it.
Oh, sorry. No, I'm just reading it. And you see my face going crazy. I'll share the screen again. So here they're checking for speech synthesis, probably for oral browsers, for the visually impaired, probably is what this is for. Now, Google always says you should, and it even says in the Webmaster Trends guidelines that you should have mechanisms in place so that people who are visually impaired can see. I wonder have you ever checked for this DOM module, and does it correlate with rankings?
I have not.
Well, here's another one for the list.
yeah. I should probably put in accessibility and ARIA and.
So here's some of the actual DOM nodes you can look for too. Crypto as well, some kind of cryptography, subtle. I'm not even sure what that means.
Did he share this so that we could run it on our own sites and see if
He's at JR Oakes, OAKES on Twitter. Go ahead and ask him. I can ask him. I have his email. We've coordinated back and forth. I can ask him as well what's going on.
Yeah, I'd like a copy of this output. I don't need the script, but I'd like to see if I can pull some more factors for CORA from it.
Yeah, if you read the script, you can see if it's consistent before you even do that.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. This is just what's happening on his site. Application cache, on obsolete, on cached, on update ready. These are all JavaScript events. On update, on error, on checking. They're all null. Why are they checking all that?
Well, they're all null. They're not. They've been initialized.
Well, what do you mean they've been initialized? I thought null would mean that none of them have happened, and they recorded none of them have happened.
Well, they haven't been set. So
they haven't been set yet. So they're checking. They are checking JavaScript events to see if they've been set. So let's see. Whatever memory. They're checking some memory sizes here. Heap size limits. They're checking. Look at all the timing they're checking. Request start, DOM loading, response start, request start. Look at all this. They're checking the actual. This is what what would you call this? The heap size time? Like what is this big number?
Well, this is looking more and more like when you right-click the page and you say inspect and you pull up all those windows in Chrome that show you like the network activity and the load times. And this looks like the scaffolding and the rough end for all of that. It makes me wonder if Googlebot isn't a headless version of Chrome.
Well, I got more information for that lower on down here. So just keep in mind here, they're checking when the DOM is complete. They're checking when it's interactive. They're checking when it's loading. They're checking the response start and end. So again, if you want to say speed is or is not a factor, here's a bunch of evidence to suggest that it is, because Googlebot is checking it and recording it and sending it back to Google servers. Here's another one. Let me see, where is it? They're checking the size limits of your pages and how much everything is taking. Too big of a page, maybe it might be rendered into such a thing. Checking your inner width, your height, that's not a problem. They're checking geolocation, do not track. Now look at this here. We've all been told that Google is a stripped down version of Chrome. Well, then why doesn't it report it's a stripped down version of Chrome? As far as this is concerned, it is a version of Netscape Mozilla running on Linux. It doesn't say Chrome here anywhere.
No, but they do call it out as Googlebot, so it might be like a split build of like a Chrome-like engine, but it's headless. Not specifically Chrome, because Chrome isn't headless. It actually renders the graphics.
Yes.
So yeah, and it makes sense that it would be on Linux because that's going to have the best scalability in a large grid or cluster scenario.
Of course, yeah. Now look, and they also say that they don't load cookies, but it says cookie enabled true.
And the Mozilla 5 compatible thing, that's been around even for a long time. That goes back to Netscape Navigator, so I don't think that's them being nefarious. That's kind of hardwired in because of Netscape.
Yeah, I know that quite often they'll do that, but it should say Chrome in here somewhere. Product should say Chrome, not Gecko.
Well, they're saying Googlebot, and the other things are compatibility tags.
Yes, this is Mozilla 5.0 compatible. Yeah, I got that. But I know what you're talking about, Ted. But one of these should say Chrome if it's Chrome. I've done this JavaScript test in Chrome. One of these will say Chrome.
I'm starting to think that it's Chrome-like, but it's not exactly Chrome. So they call it Googlebot by a different name, but it's largely Chrome.
Well, yeah, and that's largely true, but not fully true, right?
Yeah, okay, that's my guess. I don't know for sure.
Well, that's what it looks like. Again, they don't represent it's Chrome anywhere in here, even though we've been told it's Chrome. And they check other interesting stuff, like is the toolbar visible, status bar visible, scroll bars they visible, personal bars visible, menu bar, location bar, the history state.
Well, see, that's interesting that they say that's true on all of those. So I wonder, are they actually showing a graphical rendering with a window, an application window, or are they spoofing that?
Yeah. I think they would need to be Well, they could just check in the header state. They don't actually need to, because they just see it in JavaScript. You just switch it off, and CSS to just switch it off is the only, really, I think, is what they'd be doing there. Landscape primary, the orientation they're checking, again the color depth, and then some final stuff here. Service, I don't know what they make of this. Persistent 1, event and log information, message, load, page show, resize. So I don't know.
Those look like nano time stamps. So
yeah, the same kind of nano timestamps they had above for when they checked how long, when they started loading it, how long it took to load, when the DOM loaded, when it was usable. So anyway, we've run out of time. I found that stuff interesting. Remember, Google has sworn to us it's a version of Chrome. That's all it is, and that they don't look at Google Analytics. They never use Google Analytics, and that Facebook is not used for ranking. Well, then why are they sending that back to Google? Why are they sending this information back to Google? It's a good old conspiracy theory. So, all right. So thanks very much, folks. Let's see if there's any final questions here, unless Clint was dealing with all of them. Polo Chan asks, front page versus inner page backlink, does it make a big difference? Yes. A backlink from an index page in the middle of the index page and a content index page backlink typically sends, historically and still in our testing, sends way more juice than an inner page backlink. So it can make a huge difference. Just make sure it doesn't look like it's bought, that is to say purchased. Barb Mikes says he effing loves CORA. You're absolutely right, Bob, because it's awesome. It definitely allows you to blow away the competition. Any competition that is not using my 5 levels of evidence and basically is only using level 1, everyone's opinion, or at best in the field observations, CORA blows that away out of the park. He asks, how important is it to use proxies? I'm assuming with CORA. I don't even use proxies. What about you, Ted?
I use them a couple times a year. Like I'll get in a situation where I did a funky search and Google will issue a CAPTCHA challenge through CORA. There's a few ways to handle that. You can use a proxy for a couple days and it'll time out and go away. There's a way to trick CORA into letting you enter the CAPTCHA. That's another route. Contact me if you need to do that. You can unplug your cable modem and leave it unplugged for a minute and then plug it back in. Most of the time, that'll get you a new IP address that could get you around it. So do you have to have them? No, most of the year I run without proxies. If you do a lot of rank checking and stuff like that, you might get into trouble with CORA. But it's usually the fault of those other tools if you have problems every week.
Yeah, I've done 30 pulls back to back, and I've never had Google ask me once. And so,
yeah, I go to great lengths to minimize the possibility of CAPTCHA challenge in CORA. That's why you have to search from the CORA toolbar now. It's all to minimize CAPTCHA.
Can you use CORA on a VPS?
Yeah, you should, as long as it meets the system requirements. I know people do that on Windows because Windows threading is not very friendly, and CORA has very extensive threading. I try to do everything in parallel to cut down runtime, so it's a CPU hog. On a Mac, I don't even notice, but on PCs, I know some people run CORA on a remote server.
Sweet. Any last questions there, folks? You got 10 seconds. In that 10-second time, I would like to thank everyone else for watching. Again, this has been White Hat versus Black Hat SEO Show. If you have any SEO questions at all and you'd like to ask us, by all means, you can contact myself at joshbashinsky@gmail.com. You can follow me on Twitter at joshbashinsky, and you can see more experiments like this, more secret leaks, knowledge, and experiments at youtube.com/jbashins. It's JBACHYNS. You can contact Ted at
SEO Tool Lab. I have a contact page. It goes right to me.
And you can contact Clint at
info@digitalear.com, or you can do a search on YouTube for SEO this week, and I kind of hold the sister show on Fridays. We go over news and then we do site audits.
Sweet. So this has been the show. Thanks very much, guys. Tune in next week where I'm going to try and again twist Clint's meaty arm to do some kind of Black Hat-ish presentation. So we'll see. If I keep putting pressure on him, maybe eventually he'll do it. So I said it live on air, and everyone's expecting it now. So I don't know, Clint. I don't know. You gotta share some of that giant knowledge in your giant brain of yours.
Could we have the worst things we've ever done episode where we get everybody to do it?
That'd be a good one.
You mean in terms of SEO?
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, let's just limit it to SEO. Yeah. Okay. Well, we'll see. We'll see what we can do. So thanks very much, folks. And we'll talk to you next week. And as I always say, good luck in the SERPs. Bye-bye.
Bye.